police dog focused on the teacher's bag, barking repeatedly. She initially dismissed it. However, the principal's examination of the bag revealed a startling discovery that shocked everyone. Here's the account of what occurred. Before we delve into today's story, please leave a comment below indicating your location. And if you enjoy remarkable police dog stories such as this one, be sure to subscribe. You won't want to miss future content. The autumn morning air felt crisp and clean. Officer Rebecca Martinez, known as Becca by her friends and colleagues, drove her patrol car into the visitor parking lot of Lincoln Elementary School. The large brick building, featuring colorful playground equipment and hand-painted murals, appeared welcoming in the early October sunlight. Beside her, Riker, her 3-year-old German Shepherd partner, remained watchful in his specially designed compartment, his dark, intelligent eyes following the children as they entered the school. "Ready for another school demonstration?" Becca asked, reaching back to scratch behind his ears. Riker's tail thumped against the seat, his posture remaining professional despite his obvious excitement. These community outreach events were his favorite assignments. He enjoyed the attention and the occasional treat sneaked to him by an admiring child. As Becca adjusted her crisp Oakland Police Department uniform in the rearview mirror, she felt a surge of pride in their 2 years together. She and Riker had established themselves as one of the department's most respected canine teams. His detection skills were exceptional, his obedience flawless, and the bond between them unwavering. These school demonstrations served a purpose beyond community relations. They offered an opportunity to inspire the next generation. Principal Harrison greeted them at the front entrance, offering a warm and welcoming handshake. Mr. Martinez arrived, stating perfect timing. "The assembly is all set up in the gymnasium." The children had been discussing it constantly all week. Becca trailed after him through hallways displaying student artwork and educational posters. Riker kept his heels perfectly aligned beside her. The gymnasium was filled with the eager conversation of elementary students seated cross-legged on the floor, their teachers positioned carefully around the edges. "Good morning, Lincoln Elementary," Principal Harrison's voice announced over the microphone. "Today we have some very special guests. Please join us in welcoming Officer Rebecca Martinez and her partner, Riker." The demonstration commenced without issue. Rebecca detailed Riker's training as he executed fundamental obedience commands, drawing expressions of admiration as he accurately retrieved objects and successfully completed a miniature obstacle course. The children watched attentively while Rebecca described how police dogs assist in locating missing individuals and identifying hazardous materials. "Could any teachers volunteer for our scent detection demonstration?" Becca inquired, presenting a training aid, a small canister containing a trace scent intended for demonstrations. Ms. Eleanor Winters, a petite woman with a neat brown bob and wire-rimmed glasses, volunteered among several others. As the respected 4th grade teacher approached, something shifted in Riker's demeanor. His ears perked up, and his body grew stiff next to Becca. Riker abruptly turned away from the training aid. His focus shifted to Ms. Winters' tote bag, located near the gymnasium wall. A low growl emanated from his throat, a sound Becca had never encountered during a school visit. "Riker, heel," Becca instructed softly. However, her partner remained focused, his growl evolving into persistent, urgent barking that reverberated through the suddenly silent gymnasium. The sudden change from a happy demonstration to Riker's forceful barking immediately created a noticeable tension throughout the gymnasium. Children who had been smiling just a few moments prior now appeared concerned, with some even moving backward on the gleaming floor. Ms. Winters paused in her step, her face losing color as Riker continued barking at her canvas tote bag. "Riker, stop," Becca stated more sternly, placing a hand on his tactical harness. The shepherd paused briefly but stayed watchful, his gaze fixed on the bag. 15 years in law enforcement, and 8 as a K-9 handler, had shown Becca how to understand her partners with remarkable precision. This wasn't enthusiasm or bewilderment, it was a practiced alert. Principal Harrison approached, his formal smile tight as he spoke to the students, who were beginning to whisper, "Perhaps we should take a brief 5-minute break? Teachers, please direct your classes back to your rooms briefly." The organized movement of 200 elementary students returning with their teachers allowed Becca a moment to consider the situation. Ms. Winters remained still, her fingers fidgeting with the silver pendant around her neck. "I am so sorry about this," the principal stated once the gym was clear, his voice quiet. "Ms. Winters is among our most valued educators, Teacher of the Year on 2 occasions. There must be some error." Becca nodded, keeping a professional demeanor as her thoughts quickly considered various explanations. Incorrect alerts sometimes occurred with all K-9 units, but Riker's performance history was almost flawless. Furthermore, she understood his alerts. This wasn't hesitation, this was certainty. "Eleanor, do you have any idea what might be causing this reaction?" Principal Harrison asked softly. Ms. Winters replied that she did not, but Becca observed her hand move as if to shield a bag. "Maybe some food would be nice? I brought banana bread for the teacher's lounge." "Food wouldn't trigger this kind of alert," Becca explained carefully. "Riker is trained for narcotics, certain medications, and explosives." The word explosives made Principal Harrison's eyes widen slightly. Ms. Winters let out a small, shaky laugh. "This is absurd. I've been teaching here for 12 years. Becca observed the subtle details most would miss. The slight tremor in Ms. Winters' right hand. She noticed the way her eyes avoided direct contact. Beads of perspiration appeared at her hairline, even though the gymnasium was cool. "Ms. Winters, with your permission, I'd like to check your bag," Becca said, keeping her voice calm and friendly. "It would resolve this quickly, and we can return to the demonstration." "I don't think that's necessary," Ms. Winters responded, taking a slight step backward. "This is embarrassing enough as it is." Principal Harrison appeared conflicted, his eyes moving between the esteemed teacher and the vigilant police dog. "Eleanor, perhaps it would be best to simply—" "Tom, this is absurd," Ms. Winters interjected, addressing the principal by his first name. "You know me." But Riker had started barking again, more urgently now, pulling a little against his harness. Something was clearly amiss, and Becca needed to discover the cause. Anxiety filled the vacant gymnasium as Becca recalled her initial day at the Oakland Police Department's K-9 Training Center. The memory remained clear. A brisk morning similar to today, with the sound of dogs barking throughout the training area, and her own apprehensive excitement as Sergeant Wilson guided her towards the kennels. Martinez was introduced to Riker, as he stopped before a kennel containing a young German shepherd with intelligent eyes and ears that appeared too large for his head. He had failed his first training program. The trainer said he was too independent, but she felt she saw potential in him. The question was, did she? She recalled kneeling before the kennel, meeting Riker's gaze as he studied her with an intensity that seemed almost human. Unlike other dogs who barked or jumped excitedly, Riker had simply watched, assessing. After she had finished speaking, "Hey there, partner," he moved toward the gate, his posture alert but calm. "Well, I'll be damned," Sergeant Wilson had muttered. First handler he hasn't growled at. Their training had been grueling. Riker's independence made him resistant to standard techniques, and Becca had endured several suggestions to request a different dog, but she'd perceived something in his stubbornness, a determination that mirrored her own. They had encouraged each other, tested each other, and ultimately established a pattern that evolved them from separate individuals into an outstanding team. Their significant moment occurred 6 months into training during a complicated search exercise. While other teams adhered to the standard procedure, Riker had abruptly changed direction, guiding Becca to a concealed training tool that had been inadvertently dropped during setup. The instructors had been astonished. The assistance wasn't included in the operation, yet Riker had identified its faint signal amidst numerous interferences. Subsequently, they had compiled a record that demonstrated their effectiveness. This included 17 successful drug seizures, 3 missing children located, and a reputation for precision that had established them as the department's preferred team for challenging investigations. Only recently, in the past month, they had exposed a complex smuggling ring at the port that had bypassed standard searches. However, there had also been resistance. Just last week, Lieutenant Garcia had questioned Becca's decision to search a home based solely on Riker's alert, suggesting she was too quick to trust the dog's instincts over human intelligence. The search had produced no results, a rare failure that still felt disappointing. Sometimes I wonder if we place too much faith in these animals, Garcia had commented afterward. They're tools, Martinez, not fortune tellers. The recollection reinforced Becca's determination as she confronted the present circumstances. Riker wasn't merely an asset, he was her colleague, and his current demeanor indicated a serious problem with Ms. Winter's bag. The recent increase in prescription drug abuse among teenagers heightened the worry. Several local high schools had documented occurrences within the past month, and stories were spreading regarding a structured distribution network. Was it possible this had extended to the elementary level? The thought caused her discomfort. Becca steadied herself, concentrating on the current situation, Riker's unwavering vigilance, and Ms. Winter's growing anxiety. Her years of training solidified into a firm conviction. This wasn't an error or chance occurrence. This was Riker acting precisely as he's been taught. Ms. Winter, Becca stated, her voice calm but resolute, I'm going to need to examine that bag. The teacher held her tote more tightly. This is entirely unwarranted and humiliating. I have personal items inside. Medication, personal items. Principal Harrison cleared his throat. Eleanor, please, let's resolve this so we can proceed with the program. The tension in the gymnasium was noticeable, thick like the air before a storm. Riker stayed focused, his training preventing him from approaching without instruction. However, his posture conveyed unwavering confidence. If your concern involves prescription medication, Becca suggested, I understand. You may present those details to Principal Harrison directly. Ms. Winters looked towards the exit doors. I would prefer that my private health details are not discussed within the school. This feels like a breach of privacy. Eleanor, Principal Harrison stated, lowering his voice to a worried tone, you have previously been willing to provide your migraine medication to the nurse. What has changed? She lowered her shoulders a little. All right. However, I prefer this handled in private, without a police dog creating a spectacle. Becca agreed. We can utilize your office, Principal Harrison. Riker will need to be there. His response initiated this. But we can be discreet. The journey to the administrative offices was quiet and strained. Riker kept his heel position perfectly beside Becca, but his focus stayed on the tote bag held tightly against Ms. Winter's side. Numerous teachers looked from their classrooms as they walked past. Upon entering the principal's office, Harrison closed the blinds and indicated the visitor chairs. Let's resolve this swiftly and professionally, he stated. Principal Harrison, please examine the bag, Becca requested, adhering to procedure by having the school administrator perform the search while she attended to Riker. Ms. Winter's hand trembled as she placed her tote on the desk, her face now pale. This was absurd, she whispered, but the protest seemed uninspired. Principal Harrison paused, then cautiously opened the bag. His expression changed from skeptical to confused to shocked as he removed items and placed them on his desk. A small plastic container that seemed to hold prescription pills, but without any pharmacy labels, 3 flash drives, a stack of papers resembling test papers marked with confidential state assessment stamps across the top, and lastly, a notebook filled with student names and what appeared to be payment amounts. Eleanor, Harrison's voice was barely audible. What is this? Ms. Winters slumped into a chair, her face hidden in her hands. It's not what it looks like, she mumbled. Harrison, his usual calm facade faltering, pointed to what appeared to be test materials that had left the secure testing room. Becca identified medication Adderall, recognizing the pills from previous cases, a prescription stimulant often abused to enhance studying and test performance. Ms. Winters looked up, tears tracing a path down her face. You don't understand the pressure, the persistent demands for higher test scores, the funding connected to performance metrics, she said. Riker, remaining alert, moved closer to the desk drawer, his attention moving away from the bag. There's more, Becca stated softly, gesturing toward the drawer, and adding, may I? Principal Harrison nodded silently, and Becca opened the drawer. Within it was another container of pills, distinct from the first. The medications were clearly labeled as prescriptions, issued to different people, none of whom were Eleanor Winters. I was simply attempting to assist them, Ms. Winters cried, referring to the struggling students, those experiencing anxiety, and those whose parents lacked the financial means. Were you distributing illegally obtained prescription medication to elementary school students? Harrison inquired, his voice devoid of emotion. It's important, just a few eighth graders, and then their older siblings at the high school requested it. Her voice faded as the full impact of her actions seemed to register. Oh, God, what have I done? Becca entered the hallway to call for assistance via radio, leaving Principal Harrison to observe Ms. Winters. The usual, somewhat disorderly atmosphere of the school day persisted around them, students and teachers oblivious to the events unfolding in the principal's office. Upon her return, Ms. Winters appeared calmer, although her hands still shook as she held a tissue. Lieutenant Wilson and other officers were en route, Becca stated. Ms. Winters, I'd like to examine your classroom, Harrison said, his expression still showing the impact of a trusted colleague's actions. According to our findings, Becca responded, observing Ms. Winters visibly withdrawing into her seat. Riker is still suggesting the possibility of more. 20 minutes elapsed before Lieutenant Wilson arrived, accompanied by 2 other officers. The school's hallways were swiftly evacuated, and a focus team proceeded to Ms. Winters' 4th grade classroom. The vibrant reading nook and inspirational posters created a striking contrast to the seriousness of the circumstances. Riker proceeded deliberately, moving around the room with a familiar expertise. Upon reaching the teacher's desk, he alerted once more, nudging at a lower drawer resembling a typical file cabinet. There is nothing further, Ms. Winters stated softly from the doorway, accompanied by an officer. Everything was contained within my bag. Becca inspected the drawer, observing an unusual characteristic regarding its size. This drawer is less deep than expected, she remarked. Her fingers discovered a concealed catch, which, when released, exposed a hidden compartment. The interior revealed further test materials, a small digital scale, multiple notebooks containing ledger entries, and a stack of cash carefully banded. Lieutenant Wilson softly whistled. This is a rather complex operation for a 4th grade teacher. Becca understood, leafing through one of the notebooks. The entries spanned 3 years and included various handwritings. There were also coded references to other schools in the district. The available information revealed a troubling scenario. A group involving educators and potentially administrators appeared to be altering test results throughout the district. At the same time, they were running a prescription drug operation. Medications were being given to students with assurances of improved focus and exam results, fostering a pattern of reliance and academic misconduct. Faced with further proof, Ms. Winters became overwhelmed. It began modestly, she wept, initially assisting a small number of students with early versions of study resources. Subsequently, Peterson at Northwood High suggested the use of Adderall, claiming his students showed a 40% improvement with pharmaceutical aid. The school district continually increased the performance benchmarks, warning that schools failing to meet the standards would be closed. Where are you obtaining the prescription medications? Lieutenant Wilson inquired. Crowley and the science department have access to the medical supply room, she replied. Andrews, working within the administration, made changes to the inventory records, she confided. Please recognize we were in a dire situation. The system requires unrealistic outcomes. And when schools underperform, teachers face job losses. Communities are negatively impacted. So you resorted to supplying drugs to children? Becca questioned, disbelief evident in her voice. Ms. Winters remained silent, her response only tears. As officers continued to document the evidence, Becca watched Ms. Winters through the conference room window. The teacher, formerly held in high regard, now sat slumped at the table, responding to Lieutenant Wilson's questions amidst tears. The woman's decline was remarkable in its speed, shifting from a valued educator to someone accused of a crime within a few hours. Becca's thoughts turned to Ms. Winters' personnel file, which Principal Harrison had provided while they waited for the search warrant. Eleanor Winters, 43, had grown up in Oakland's struggling East Side. Despite significant challenges, she obtained a teaching degree and returned to serve her community. Her initial performance reviews were filled with commendations for her commitment to students facing adversity. What became of the hopeful young teacher? The narrative unfolded gradually through Ms. Winters' confession. 5 years ago, the school district introduced new standardized testing requirements directly linked to school funding. Lincoln Elementary, serving a predominantly working-class neighborhood, had faced challenges in meeting increasingly demanding metrics. "You can't fully grasp what it's like," Ms. Winters had explained, her voice filled with a sense of exhaustion. "We are evaluated solely on test scores, without consideration for whether children are genuinely learning or developing." Last year, the school received notification that if scores didn't improve by 15%, the school would be closed and students would be reassigned to Central Heights. Central Heights Elementary, situated across the highway in a more affluent area, required an hour-long bus ride for many Lincoln students. The closure would have been devastating for working parents who depended on after-school programs and local support networks. "Initially, we implemented after-school sessions," she explained, supplemented with extra worksheets and practice tests. "However, our students were already facing significant challenges, many coming from homes where parents held multiple jobs, where English wasn't the primary language, and where basic needs weren't consistently met. The situation intensified as initial scores indicated only slight progress." It was then that Alan Peterson, a high school teacher encountering comparable difficulties, contacted her with a proposition: advance copies of test materials in exchange for guaranteed results. The scheme had developed over time. What started as sharing test preparation materials progressed to providing actual test questions. When that approach wasn't enough, Peterson proposed using pharmaceutical aids, such as Adderall and similar stimulants, to assist students in concentrating during exams. Initially, scores increased by 22%, Ms. Winters had confessed. "The district lauded us as an example of educational reform. Parents felt reassured that their children would not be transported across town. Teachers retained their positions." What Ms. Winters had not foreseen was the rapid escalation of the program beyond her ability to manage. Several other schools experiencing difficulties sought similar assistance. Students started asking for medication to be used outside of testing situations. This created a complex underground market disguised as a commitment to high academic standards. "I simply wanted to aid my students," she murmured. "I didn't intend for this to happen." Becca reflected, observing the distressed teacher. The road to misfortune is often paved with good intentions. By evening, Lincoln Elementary was engulfed in intense media coverage. News vans filled the street as reporters shared rapid updates concerning the teacher who had become a drug dealer. Parents assembled outside Northwood High School in worried groups, looking at their phones and quietly discussing the situation. The emergency school board meeting, quickly arranged in the district auditorium, was full of worried families. Superintendent Wallace stood at the podium, his usual confident appearance replaced by a serious expression. "We understand your concerns and share your shock," he began, addressing the restless crowd. "The actions of Ms. Winters and potentially others represent a profound betrayal of trust, but I want to assure you that we are cooperating fully with law enforcement and taking immediate steps to address the situation." These steps had already begun. Peterson from the high school and 3 other educators implicated in Ms. Winters' confession have been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. A comprehensive review of the district's standardized testing protocols was in progress. Grief counselors would be accessible to students at all impacted schools beginning tomorrow. The recent disclosures were particularly distressing for the families of Lincoln Elementary. Many had placed considerable faith in Ms. Winters over the years, recognizing her as a committed educator advocating for a school facing challenges. "My daughter adored Ms. Winters," Maria Gonzalez shared with a local reporter, her voice filled with emotion. "She received additional assistance after school 3 days a week. I now question the nature of those sessions." The school nurse had started collaborating with medical professionals to detect students potentially receiving unauthorized medication, although the complete scope was not yet known. Early information indicated that Ms. Winters had mainly focused on older students in the middle and high school levels, but several 5th graders were also involved in the situation as preliminary cases. Community leaders reacted swiftly. Councilmember Jenkins declared an emergency review of the district's performance metrics and funding formulas, and a local pharmaceutical company volunteered to sponsor drug awareness programs. Parent-teacher groups established support sessions to assist families in dealing with the disappointment. For Becca, observing the community's response evoked a range of feelings. The system that had placed pressure on Ms. Winters, despite the lack of justification for her reaction, largely remained unchanged. The same metrics, the same funding challenges, the same inequities would persist in schools such as Lincoln Elementary even after the scandal receded from public attention. How many more are there? Lieutenant Wilson mused, observing parents entering the auditorium. Educators who began with positive intentions but then violated boundaries they hadn't anticipated. The question remained unanswered, yet deeply troubling. The parking lot was dark and empty, the school long deserted, when Becca remained in her patrol car. Riker slept beside her, his duties for the day finished. His keen observation had uncovered a case that would probably extend far past Lincoln Elementary. She reached out to pet his fur, sensing his even breathing. "You did well today, partner," she whispered. "Really well." Riker opened one eye, responding to her praise with a quiet thump of his tail against the seat before returning to his rest. His absolute confidence in his abilities, his consistent focus on the job, were lessons Becca often thought about during her career. The radio was silent, the paperwork finished for now. During these calm moments between cases, doubt sometimes appeared. This isn't about Riker's capabilities, but rather about the systems they operated within, the complexities of human motivations, and the ambiguous situations their work often exposed. Ms. Winters wasn't a hardened criminal, at least not in the typical understanding of the term. She was an educator who had lost direction, who had eroded her ethical principles one incremental step at a time until she discovered herself on the opposite side of a boundary she'd previously considered inviolable. How many others existed, making comparable decisions, facing comparable pressures? Becca recalled her own difficulties as a new officer. The incentives to take shortcuts, to disregard issues for the perceived greater benefit. The pledge she'd made had steered her through those moments of uncertainty, just as Riker's training guided him through distractions and false trails. The contrast wasn't lost on her. An animal had demonstrated more defined ethical limits than a highly educated professional. Riker showed no interest in school budgets, performance metrics, or career advancement. His focus was on fulfilling the duties he's been trained for, cherishing the partnership they've cultivated, and upholding the straightforward distinction between right and wrong, a clarity humans frequently obscured with justifications. "Must be nice," Becca murmured, gently scratching behind his ears, observing his simplified view of the world. Their partnership had been established upon a foundation of trust, her faith in his instincts, his reliance on her guidance. Whenever confidence diminished, when personal reservations or political considerations or expediency became factors, the mission was compromised. The current day had emphatically underscored that understanding. Her phone vibrated with a message from Captain Reynolds. "Excellent work today. 5 additional arrests resulted from Winters' intelligence. This case will continue to broaden." Becca started the engine, glancing in her rearview mirror as Riker sat up, immediately vigilant. Despite the intricate challenges present in the continuing investigation, and regardless of the systemic shortcomings that had led to this circumstance, their course of action remained straightforward. Adhere to the evidence, rely on the training, safeguard those in need. Certain days, that straightforwardness proved sufficient. The morning sun reflected off the recently installed sign at Lincoln Elementary, proclaiming education through integrity. Principal Harrison stood beneath it, welcoming students with refreshed vigor as they entered the building for the spring semester. From their patrol car, Becca and Riker observed, having just finished their monthly visit, a new tradition that started unexpectedly. What had initially been a standard demonstration transformed into a recurring community engagement program, with Riker now quite well known among the students. A young girl with bright beads in her braids, Officer Becca, stepped away from the group, hurrying to meet them. "Is Riker coming to our class today?" Ms. Jimenez, the newly hired 4th grade teacher, smiled apologetically regarding her energetic student. "He certainly is," Becca confirmed, observing Riker's tail wagging a little at the acknowledgement. "However, recall our discussion. He's working, not playing," Zoe stated earnestly. "We are only allowed to pet him when you give permission." The investigation that commenced with Riker's alert had extended considerably beyond Lincoln Elementary. 17 educators throughout the district were ultimately involved in what the media called the achievement ring. This scandal resulted in the superintendent's resignation and a full revision of the district's performance evaluation metrics. Most significantly, it initiated a national discussion concerning the challenges confronting schools in underserved communities and the potentially harmful effects of funding exclusively based on standardized test scores. Ms. Winters had entered a guilty plea to several charges, including the distribution of controlled substances to minors, theft of test materials, and academic fraud. Her assistance resulted in a lessened sentence of 7 years, with a potential parole opportunity after 4, although her teaching career had concluded. Within the school, signs of transformation were apparent. The Testing Achievement Center had been renamed the Student Support Hub, now focusing on individualized learning assistance instead of test preparation. Parent volunteers managed a new after-school program. Funding from a grant provided by a local tech company supported comprehensive mental health services. "We're prioritizing genuine learning again," Principal Harrison said to Becca as they walked toward the assembly hall. "Test scores are important, but they don't represent the sole definition of success." The quarterly awards ceremony acknowledged progress in areas including academic growth, community service, and perseverance through challenges. The applause was thunderous as Becca and Riker were called to the stage. Officer Martinez and Riker conveyed an important lesson to the assembled students. Harrison stated, "Integrity isn't simply about adhering to rules, it's about acting ethically, even when facing challenges." While Riker performed a brief demonstration of his search skills, locating hidden training aids throughout the auditorium to the children's delight, Becca considered the changes initiated by One Alert Dog. Changes were underway, with priorities being reassessed and vulnerabilities being handled. Subsequently, as they got ready to depart, Lieutenant Wilson found them in the parking lot. "That press conference you gave last month gained national attention," he told her. "3 other districts have asked for our K-9 units to assess their testing facilities. They are referring to this as preventative measures." Becca acknowledged, observing Riker already concentrating on their next location. Prevention is always preferable to prosecution. As they drove away from Lincoln Elementary, Riker's head was held high in the passenger compartment. Becca felt a sense of completion. They hadn't just solved a crime, they'd helped set a community on a better path. Ultimately, that was what their partnership was truly about. Have you ever witnessed a working dog make an unexpected discovery, like Riker did? Their instincts often surpass our own understanding. Do you believe our education system places too much stress on teachers and students through standardized testing? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed Riker and Officer Martinez's story, please subscribe and enable notifications by clicking the bell icon to stay updated on our daily K-9 tales. Share this video with anyone who appreciates these incredible working dogs. Don't miss our previous stories, currently displayed on your screen. Until our next episode, see you tomorrow, same time, with another extraordinary K-9 hero story. The service dog remains stationed outside his former handler's room, stubbornly resisting attempts by staff to relocate him. "He doesn't even recognize you," one nurse observed. "He's too far gone." Despite this, the dog persisted. Then, one morning, he calmly positioned himself before the veteran, and suddenly, deeply buried, traumatic memories resurfaced. What actions did the dog take, and what did the veteran ultimately recall? Please subscribe and leave a comment indicating your location. Let's begin. The VA psychiatric facility's fluorescent lights created stark shadows as Sergeant Thomas Grady gazed blankly out the window. 6 months had elapsed since his transfer from Walter Reed, but time felt insignificant within the mental fog he experienced. The sound of rain on the window reflected the scattered recollections that briefly appeared, then vanished before he could hold onto them. "Good morning, Sergeant Grady," a voice said from the entrance. Dr. Elaine Monroe stood there with his file, her demeanor carefully empathetic. "How are you feeling today?" Thomas didn't respond. "The same as yesterday, Doc." His voice held the strained quality of a man who had recently been giving commands above the sound of weapons fire. The mark along his jawline was just an outward sign of the IED's impact. The real harm was hidden beneath his skull, where memories had been broken like glass. Your latest scans show continued physical healing, Dr. Monroe began, settling into a chair. Spare me the medical details, Thomas interrupted. 6 months of tests, and all of you can tell me is that I should remember. But I don't. These sudden shifts from clarity to disorientation had become a defining feature of his condition. He shifted abruptly, first displaying the bearing of a soldier, then becoming agitated, seemingly overtaken by disjointed memories without explanation. You served as a sergeant in the 5th Special Forces. 3 tours in Afghanistan, injured 6 months ago in Kandahar, she pointed out, reiterating their established routine. So you keep telling me, Thomas responded, a hint of frustration in his voice. But it's just words. I don't feel it. The medical personnel approached Thomas with care. 3 orderlies had been injured during his previous episodes. His physical strength had returned more quickly than his mental stability, making him a potential hazard when combat memories elicited reactions without a clear connection. Dr. Monroe had accepted his case after 2 prior psychiatrists requested transfers. While others perceived a liability, she identified a distressed veteran caught between recollections and a loss of awareness. Today, we are going to attempt a different approach, she stated. Thomas laughed, a sound laced with cynicism. Another quick fix? Dr. Monroe responded, not at all. An unforeseen package has arrived for you. It seems to be from the past. A disturbance in the East Corridor caused people to notice as a uniformed officer guided a Belgian Malinois through security. The dog's ears stood up suddenly, its eyes fixed on Thomas from 30 yards away. Before the handler could respond, the Malinois pulled forward, drawing the officer a few steps. Heel, the handler ordered firmly. Something about the command heel made Thomas feel a strange tremor, although he couldn't remember why. As staff gathered around the visitors, he withdrew to his room. Shortly after, Dr. Monroe arrived at his door, carrying a file. Sergeant Grady, she said, there's someone who might be of interest to you. A military working dog named Valor. These documents indicate he served as your canine partner for 14 months in Afghanistan. Thomas looked without expression. I have no recollection of a dog. Dr. Monroe acknowledged, that's understandable considering your current state, but Valor's handler has records confirming he was your assigned partner during your final deployment. My partner? Thomas repeated, the words feeling unfamiliar. That's impossible. I would remember that. Would you? Dr. Monroe asked softly. You don't remember your squad mates or commanding officer. Before Thomas could answer, a disturbance arose in the hallway. The Malinois had broken free and raced to Thomas's door, ears forward, body vibrating with energy. Get that thing out of here, Thomas shouted, stepping back. Something about the dog's intense focus made him uneasy. The handler appeared shortly after, offering an apology as he reattached the leash. I'm sorry, sir. He's never acted like this. Valor is typically very well behaved. I don't know this animal, Thomas retorted, and I don't want it close. The dog emitted a low whine, a sound unexpectedly unsettling, given its earlier assertive behavior. His gaze remained fixed on Thomas. This wasn't part of my agreement, Dr. Monroe clarified. Your previous superior officer arranged this. He thought that seeing Valor could potentially stimulate memory recall. Thomas looked at the dog, experiencing only annoyance. It isn't working. Please remove him. As the handler began to take Valor away, the dog hesitated, firmly positioning his paws at the doorway. The resistance wasn't hostile, but resolute. I will permit Valor to stay for a short time, Dr. Monroe stated. Not in your room, but in the shared spaces. Thomas turned away, showing indifference. Do as you please. You always do. As they led Valor away, the dog turned, his gaze lingering on Thomas. A soft whine, laced with a palpable sense of recognition and sorrow, escaped his lips. In the days that followed, staff noticed a peculiar pattern in Valor's behavior. The Malinois consistently positioned himself along Thomas's path, seemingly waiting. During physical therapy, Valor would appear in the hallway, pressed against the glass, his eyes fixed on Thomas. While Thomas was eating in the common area, the dog would position himself exactly 12 feet away, near enough to watch, but at a distance that caused Thomas discomfort. "He's acting like he's conducting surveillance," commented Jim, an orderly with a background in the Marines. "That's a tactical placement." On the fourth night, security cameras recorded Valor entering the supply closet where Thomas kept his personal belongings. The dog removed his combat boots and brought them to his door, setting them carefully at the threshold. Thomas found the boots the following morning. Instead of his typical anger regarding unwanted entries, he paused, observing them before storing them in his closet, a change from how he had handled previous items. The subsequent night, Valor brought forward another item, a set of dog tags. These, too, were positioned at Thomas's door with thoughtful placement. During therapy sessions, Valor remained outside Dr. Monroe's office. During challenging periods when Thomas's frustration grew close to violence, the dog would scratch at the door until someone opened it, then position himself between Thomas and the doctor, not aggressively but protectively. "He's not threatening," Dr. Monroe observed. "He's intervening, attempting to calm Thomas." Particularly insightful were unguarded moments. Surveillance footage showed Thomas watching Valor from his window. Personnel observed him possessing the dog tags Valor had provided, a personal link he was unwilling to admit. By the second week, the equilibrium between Thomas's opposition and Valor's continued efforts started to weaken. The critical moment occurred during a group therapy session Thomas had hesitantly participated in. 5 veterans were sharing experiences about their returns from war. When another veteran recounted losing his closest friend, it sparked a sudden, intense flashback in Thomas. "Get down!" Thomas yelled, tackling the Vietnam-era veteran across from him. "Sniper on the ridge. Get down or you're dead." Chaos erupted as Thomas, lost in a combat scenario, dragged the terrified man toward perceived cover. Staff attempted restraint, but Thomas's combat training made him formidable, even confused. Somehow, Valor pushed his way through 2 doors and rushed into the room. Instead of attacking, he positioned himself between Thomas and the staff. The dog leaned against Thomas's legs, then made a circle around him before settling directly in front of him, its eyes fixed on his face. The impact was instant. Thomas stilled, his anger giving way to bewilderment. Then, a sudden realization as he dropped to his knees. What is going on?" he whispered, looking around as if he were seeing the room for the very first time. The link was short-lived. As personnel attended to his victim, Thomas's confusion shifted to fury. Not directed at the veteran, but at Valor. "What in the world is this, huh?" he shouted, scrambling backward. Was this some kind of trick? Using animals to manipulate him? The incident led to an emergency staff meeting. Thomas had barricaded himself in his room, refusing meals and medication. "This dog is triggering severe reactions," the facility director argued. "We have other patients to consider." After debate, a compromise was reached. Valor would have 48 hours before being returned to the military program. The following morning, Thomas was in the garden, experiencing disjointed memories. He didn't realize Valor was near until the dog positioned itself directly in front of him. "Go away," Thomas snapped. "I asked them to keep you away." Valor remained still, amber eyes focused intently on Thomas's face. Thomas stood up quickly. "I said go back. I don't recognize you." He began to walk away, but lost his balance as another memory surfaced. The village again. This time, a chemical smell was present beneath the dust. The sudden dizziness caused him to drop to one knee. When his sight returned, Valor was still present, resolute. "What do you want?" Thomas asked, his voice trembling. He pushed the dog with both hands. Valor endured the force, remaining unmoved. A quiet whine escaped, not of suffering, but of resolve. "Get away," Thomas yelled, retreating rapidly. "I don't know you. I don't remember you." His back struck the garden wall. Thomas slumped down, drawing his knees to his chest protectively. The weight of his circumstances overwhelmed him. A man without memory, his identity solely defined by the accounts of others. He existed between fleeting recollections and a vacant present. "Just leave me alone," he murmured. The expected respite didn't arrive. Instead, Valor approached with measured composure. The Malinois made a single rotation, then settled with a controlled, ritualistic gesture. He extended himself before Thomas, resting his head directly on the toe of his boot in a defined posture, chin lowered, ears pricked, eyes positioned to meet Thomas's gaze when lifted. Thomas remained perfectly still. The particular angle of Valor's head, the weight on his boot, triggered a surge of recognition. The garden seemed to waver, superimposed with a different image. Dusty terrain, tactical equipment, night vision, and this very same pressure against his boot. Wait, the stance. Thomas spoke, the words coming naturally. Hold position. Valor's ears moved forward at the instruction, becoming even more still. Thomas looked at the dog, his heart pounding as pieces began to fit together. I know this. I know you. The orderly radioed softly for Dr. Monroe, understanding something important was occurring. With shaking fingers, Thomas reached out, pausing just above Valor's head. Upon making contact, Valor emitted a sound of such palpable relief, it was almost like a human expression. We trained together, Thomas stated, and memories began to coalesce for the first time since his injury. North Carolina, you were just a year old. You failed the standard program because you wouldn't leave my side during separation tests. Each word contributed to a clearer picture. Thomas gently scratched behind Valor's ear, precisely where the dog enjoyed it. A movement his body recalled instinctively. You slept at the foot of my bunk, Thomas said, his voice softening, radiating certainty and familiarity. Against regulations. Sanders protected us because you consistently reported his concealed whiskey supply. Dr. Monroe observed from the garden entrance, directing staff to maintain a distance. Thomas's fingers located a notch in Valor's left ear, a mended split almost imperceptible beneath the fur. A sniper round came too close in Cunard Province. Should have heeded the alert sooner. Valor pressed his head more firmly against Thomas's hand, reinforcing the connection. I used to tell the guys you were smarter than half the lieutenants. Thomas's fingers traced along Valor's neck, finding an old scar beneath the fur. You took shrapnel intended for me outside Kandahar. Dr. Monroe approached cautiously. Thomas, you're remembering. He looked up, his eyes clearer than she had ever seen. Not everything, just him. Valor. The name felt correct now. We worked together. He was my responsibility and I was his. Your commanding officer believed your connection might break through the amnesia, Dr. Monroe explained. Memory is complex. Sometimes emotional connections access pathways logical thinking cannot reach. Thomas nodded, his hand never leaving Valor's fur. The details of the incident, the cause of the injury, and the reason for the separation remain unclear. However, this represents a significant improvement, Thomas stated gently, observing Valor's unwavering gaze. He never forgot, Thomas said softly, meeting Valor's steady gaze. Even when I did. Valor adjusted their posture, rising to sit upright next to Thomas instead of facing him, transitioning from a defensive stance to the collaborative positioning they had consistently used throughout numerous missions. Thomas refined his posture, his hand resting on Valor's back with comfortable familiarity. I need to recall more, he stated, his voice filled with renewed resolve. I must understand what transpired with us. In the days that followed, Thomas and Valor remained constantly together. Each hour yielded fresh recollections, as the dog's presence seemed to release long-blocked memories. We were deployed together 3 times, Thomas recounted to Dr. Monroe during a therapy session. The first deployment was a standard patrol and explosive detection mission. The second time, their duties changed to direct action assignments, a result of their effective teamwork. Village clearance operations were a primary focus. Valor was capable of detecting not only explosives but also concealed individuals and weapon storage areas. He had a distinct method of signaling for various dangers. 1 ear twitch indicated explosives, 2 signaled hidden personnel. He saved our unit on numerous occasions. Dr. Monroe observed that Thomas's speech patterns had changed. He displayed increased confidence, utilizing military terminology precisely, and a soldier's rhythm returning to his voice. Thomas acknowledged. Having him here connects me to who I was. I still have gaps. Significant recollections emerged, prompted by specific cues. The framework provided context. Certain actions by Valor triggered related memories. For example, when the dog pressed his nose against Thomas's knee, Thomas remembered their established communication system. When Valor brought a tennis ball, Thomas recalled playing fetch behind their barracks after missions. Michaels, Thomas stated abruptly during a walk through the facility, Specialist Kevin Michaels, our unit's communication expert. I consistently kept butterscotch candies for Valor, even though I cautioned him against giving my dog sweets. By evening, Thomas began constructing a timeline, recording names and events upon our return. He included Jenkins, Rodriguez, and Patel. Captain Ellis led our unit. Lieutenant Cooper served as our immediate commanding officer. He was a good man, willing to listen when others might have asserted authority. When reflecting on a mission where a team member was lost, Thomas appeared visibly upset. Valor rested his head on Thomas's knee, a gesture that steadied him and kept the memory from escalating into a full-blown flashback. The last mission, Thomas began, his voice low. A mountain village close to the Pakistan border. A high-value target was using it as a waypoint. He struggled to break through the mental wall he's built to protect himself from reliving those events. I recall the approach, the village's layout. The teams splitting up. Valor and I secured the eastern buildings. Valor's ears perked up, his body stiffening as if recalling the same event. There was an ambush, Thomas recounted. It wasn't arbitrary, they were anticipating our arrival. The coordination was exceptional. Someone had compromised our operation. His breathing accelerated. Gunfire erupted from numerous locations. Radio communications were disrupted. Men were injured. We were trapped in a courtyard enclosed by buildings. Thomas's hand gripped Valor's fur.
Valor signal.
Not concerning enemy fire, we knew their locations. Something different. He continued attempting to obstruct my way, issuing the explosive signal, but he denied it with a headshake. That's where the memory breaks apart once more. I recall his warning. Then, only noise, pressure, and darkness. That's sufficient for today, Dr. Monroe stated kindly. You've achieved significant advancement. The key moment occurred when a delivery truck backfired in the parking lot. The sound reverberated through the recreation room where Thomas was playing chess. He crouched, pulling the other veteran down, scanning for threats. "AD!" he shouted, completely consumed by memory. This time, the memory played out with perfect clarity. We had cleared 2 buildings, Thomas explained later. Valor pressed against his side. Michaels and Cooper were pinned down. Ellis was coordinating extraction. Valor and I were moving to provide support when heavy fire erupted. His hand instinctively went to a scar on his arm. We reached the stone wall, and that's when the situation changed. Thomas explained that Valor's behavior altered, moving from measured alerts to frantic efforts to prevent our progress. He repeatedly issued the explosive warning, but I wasn't detecting the expected triggers. There was no disturbed earth, no visible wires. His voice tightened. I initially believed he was disoriented by the gunfire. I instructed him to advance twice, and twice he declined, a behavior he had never exhibited before. Valor emitted a soft whine, seemingly recalling the event. Rodriguez was in distress, requesting assistance. I issued the instruction, authorizing movement, disregarding Valor's caution. Thomas momentarily closed his eyes. I directed him to provide healing, employing the command that bypasses his safety protocols. During the process, Valor violated procedure entirely. He attacked me, clamping onto my tactical vest, attempting to pull me back. I felt a surge of anger, believing his training had failed. I instructed him to release his grip and resume his task. Thomas's voice lowered. He complied with that final instruction. However, his posture indicated a problem. His ears were flattened, his tail tucked, and he moved as if he were being forced toward execution. 10 meters from Rodriguez, Valor abruptly surged forward, emitting his most urgent bark. That's when I noticed it. Almost invisible wires connected to a pressure plate located beneath Rodriguez. The IED wasn't intended for a single soldier, but for any responding team. Rodriguez had activated the initial sensor, but his weight was insufficient. Any additional weight would trigger the explosion. Valor had known all along. He moved forward, attempting to disarm the trigger, because I wasn't paying attention. I finally grasped the situation and began calling for assistance. I had just activated my radio when the explosion resulted in Rodriguez's immediate death, critically wounded Thomas, and physically distanced him from Valor. My final recollection prior to Walter Reed was Valor standing watch over me, suffering from shrapnel wounds, securing the area while I was unable to move. Thomas looked at the dog, his expression filled with years of emotion. I failed him. He provided every warning, and I disregarded them. You didn't fail him, Dr. Monroe said gently. You made a judgment call that they're trying to save your teammate, and Valor never gave up on you. That's why I couldn't remember, Thomas realized. My last thought was that I'd killed Rodriguez and endangered everyone by ignoring Valor. The mind protects us from what we can't process, Dr. Monroe explained. Thomas nodded, hand resting on Valor's back. I'm ready now. The following weeks brought a remarkable transformation. Thomas's memories resurfaced in a controlled manner as a significant obstacle dissolved. While Thomas regained his strength, Valor started briefly engaging with other struggling veterans, placing himself close to them before returning to Thomas. He has always possessed the ability to perceive when someone is in distress, Thomas noted. This quality distinguished him, allowing him to understand people better than they understood themselves. The morning of Thomas's discharge dawned with autumn sunlight streaming through golden leaves. His belongings were carefully packed: clothes, medications, a journal, and letters from former unit members. Valor observed the packing, remaining alert but composed. His military vest had been returned, accompanied by retirement documents should Thomas choose that option. Dr. Monroe knocked on the door, asking, "Everything ready?" Thomas nodded, securing his duffel bag. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Your sister has confirmed she will meet you?" "Yes, it still feels strange. Reconnecting with family I barely knew months ago." "Have you decided about Valor?" Thomas's expression became thoughtful. "I'd like to discuss this one last time," he said. They walked to the garden, the site of their breakthrough, with Valor accompanying them. "I've observed how Valor interacts with other veterans," Thomas began. "It's not solely with me that he finds connection. It's with anyone experiencing the darkness I once knew," Dr. Monroe affirmed. "His support for patients in crisis has been extraordinary. That's what distinguished him in combat," Thomas clarified. "Typically, military dogs are trained to identify particular dangers. Valor consistently recognized when something was amiss even before we possessed confirming data. He perceived changes in human actions that even seasoned soldiers failed to notice." Thomas stroked Valor's back. "I always believed our bond distinguished him," he said. "Now I realize it's inherent to him, this capacity to perceive distress." Dr. Monroe observed, "You're contemplating leaving him here?" Thomas affirmed, "A part of me wants to bring him back with me. He's more than just a dog. He was the one who found me when I was lost." Valor leaned against Thomas's leg, seemingly to show understanding. "However, I often think about others, still trapped where I once was. Veterans with no means of return." Thomas's voice grew strained. "Valor discovered a route when others could not. How many others might he be able to assist?" "We've considered developing a therapy program based on your experience," Dr. Monroe stated. "He won't simply be involved in it," Thomas emphasized. "He would be central to it, a guide for healing through bonds we don't completely understand." Ultimately, Thomas knelt before Valor, looking him directly in the face. "You have consistently understood your purpose better than anyone," he said gently, holding the dog's face with his hands. "In Afghanistan, in this place, you have never forgotten what is important." Valor's focus was complete, his attention unwavering. "My time of service is over," Thomas continued steadily. "But yours is just beginning. Others need you now as I needed you. Those who are lost and uncertain of their return." Thomas touched his forehead to Valor's. "You will guide them as you guided me, and once that task is done, I will be waiting." Thomas rose, regaining composure with military precision. "Dr. Monroe will care for you. I will visit. This isn't farewell. The simply new assignments." He squared his shoulders. "Valor, remain," he requested softly. A flicker of conflict briefly appeared in the dog's posture, a clash between instinct and years of training related to warring. Then, Valor composed himself into a flawless sit, holding steady eye contact. Thomas acknowledged him with a single nod, a gesture of respect between peers, not master and dog. He then turned and departed, each stride demanding significant control. He made no backward glances. "I'm out." Valor remained in a seated, attentive position, observing his partner's departure. Only after Thomas disappeared did the dog turn to Dr. Monroe, a silent understanding passing between them. While one mission had ended, another was beginning. Have you ever witnessed the extraordinary bond between a service animal and their human partner? The way they seem to communicate without words, understanding needs that go beyond basic commands. Valor and Thomas's story serves as a reminder that healing can originate from unforeseen places, and that profound bonds can endure even amidst memory loss. Considering Thomas's circumstances, one must wonder, would you possess the fortitude to part with a devoted companion, understanding their potential to guide others out of hardship, mirroring the support they offered you? If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more extraordinary tales of service dogs and the lives they transform. Click the notification bell so you never miss our new uploads. Share this video with friends and family who appreciate the remarkable bond between humans and their canine companions. Be sure to check out our other canine hero stories now on screen, including the incredible story of a search and rescue dog who found a lost child during the worst blizzard in decades. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, with another brand new video.